Today, there was an absolute, apart from the weather, a horrible experience for millions of people trying to move around because the train union decided, bugger it, let's start pulling the workforce. Now, in part, one of the things they're whinging about is that the trains that have been built that don't need drivers might mean that some drivers may not have a job. So they want it to guarantee that a driver doesn't drive the train but just still sits in the front of the train like they need to. Also, a massive pay dispute. Now, this is a Labor government dealing with a hardcore Labor union, but in fairness, I can't fault the New South Wales government's attempts to negotiate here. They've gone soft, they've gone hard, they've threatened this, they've gone off the... But if at a moment's notice your train network is just going to shut down, how do you deal with it, Bronwyn?
Well, first of all, they're hoist on their own petard. They were told during the election campaign, you move the cap on wage increases and all hell will break loose. Now, there is a pecking order in public sector areas, and people know I'm worth more than that bloke or that bloke or that bloke.
Yes.
And if the government does a negotiation and gives a higher payment to someone a bit out of the pecking order, then the others all say, well, you've got to give us up because we're higher up. That it's just built into the system. Now, the problem is that it's not just one union dealing with. The ETU is involved in this too. Yeah. There's a proliferation of unions which are all enmeshed, all supporting of the government. They pay the government to get it elected, and when they get them elected, they say, well, now we want our payoff.
Yeah.
So this intractable position may be the Ronald Reagan solution. You sack the lot and train new ones.
Yeah, well, I mean, literally, I remember...
He did with the air traffic controllers, if you remember.
Well, yeah. I mean, we remember a scenario where I think a former Transport Minister was up somewhere over summer. To be honest, I wasn't paying that much attention. And said at one point they wanted to privatise things in order to just break the nexus of these particular workers. I would assume Labor's not planning to do that in New South Wales. But how do you fix it? I mean, if you've got people that have got an offer... And now they've got a better offer, but still they shut everything down. What do you do?
Well, you can't cave to them, that's for sure, because all you're doing is emboldening. It's like negotiating with terrorists, right? That's rule number one. Do not negotiate with terrorists, because all you do is you tell them that it works. And so if you start caving to the rail workers, next you'll have whoever, and then all of a sudden the whole state will be held ransom by the unions. So that's not an option. If I were in charge, I'd stop paying them, I'd try to sack them all, and then I'd accelerate the development of the metro so we can get rid of train drivers once and for all. And the idea of putting drivers on driverless metros is peak union insanity that everybody should condemn because it's an absurd proposition.
It's like 70s weirdness.
It's
like
crazy.
Those trains sat there for 4 years, not being used because they were driverless trains. Yeah. And it wasn't until the government agreed to put drivers on them that they went into service.
Unbelievable.